Richard Mofe Damijo, RMD, as he is widely known and fondly referred to, is the biggest male actor to come out of Nigeria and Africa as a whole. With numerous awards and recognition, he has starred in well over 60 movies and TV series locally and internationally, and is today one of the highest grossing actors in Africa, with his film titles in the last decade grossing over 1.6 billion naira at the box office alone. RMD studied theatre arts at the University of Benin and later graduated as a law student at the University of Lagos. In 2008, RMD was called to serve in government in his home state, Delta State, Nigeria, first as a special advisor to the governor and subsequently as the Honorable Commissioner of Culture and Tourism. A man of many parts, RMD is a writer, producer, lawyer, PR consultant, life coach, public speaker, master of ceremony, advocate for societal change, amongst other talents. He is married to Jumobi Adegbeson Damijo and blessed with 5 children.
Man and marriage. Let me just lay some things down. That this is perhaps the most difficult talk that I'll ever give in recent times. Reason being that when I speak, I'm a lot more animated, and having to stay confined to one chair, my phone screen, it's perhaps the biggest challenge of this talk about man and marriage. But having said that, the job must go on. Also, for a few people who have heard me speak or seen me speak, you will know that I have difficulty in following prepared scripts. And so usually when I labor through this process of trying to prepare for a talk or for a sermon or a speech, after going through all the formalities of having PowerPoints to present, I chuck it shortly before the main presentation and just do from my heart. And today is not going to be different. So I'm just going to be speaking from my heart as the Spirit directs. But I've been in this business now for it's slightly above 20 years. I've been married now for 20 years. And one of the most important things that I have been told about marriage, or that I heard before I got married, was told to me by a young lady who incidentally was unmarried at the time. And let me set the stage well so you understand how important this is. I had lost my first wife to a medical operation, and I became an eligible bachelor again, and found out that I was in fact a lot more eligible than I was before I got married the first time. And so it took a while for me to decide to get married, and it was like 4 years after my first wife passed. And there was this young sister in church who I believe is still one of the most sincere sisters I've ever met. And she came to me one day and said to me, "Brother Richard, I am believing God for you." That's what she said to me. "I'm believing God for you. I'm believing that God that I will marry you." So one day, it was a Saturday workers meeting. I was walking into church, and she saw me and she said to me, "Brother Richard, have you decided that you will get married or who to marry?" And I said, "Well, I'm not sure." And she said to me, all of us women, we are the same. What we just need is for the guy to be decided to commit to marriage. And once you can commit to marriage, it doesn't matter whether you marry me or you marry Jumobi or you marry anybody else. I just need you to know that it is not about the woman alone that you are looking for. It is about you. It is about how ready you are to commit to the marriage. And I felt that was really, really so profound. And when she was done, I thanked her, and I went to church. And later on that day, the pastor called me and said I should come see him in his office. So I went upstairs to see my pastor, and he said to me, "Oh, Brother Richard, by the way, this girl that I hear you are seeing in the newspapers and all of that, is it true?" So I said, "Who? Do you want to be?" I said, "Oh, yes, it's true, sir." And she said, do you love her? And I said, well, I think I do. I love her. And she said, and he says, so if you love her, what are you waiting for? Are you ready to commit to her and to marry her? So I said, Pastor, I think I am ready. So he said, well, go home, think about it. If you're ready, go and make sure you let her know that you are ready. Now, where am I going with this? That day, I called my girlfriend at the time, and I sat her down, and I began to tell her stuff, how many people that I had dated up until that time, how much money I had home and abroad, all the things that I admired about her, all the things that I'm ready, I have gone through, and why my fears and my aspirations and everything. And by the time I was done, she just kept looking at me. And I said to her when I was done that, look, I know you love me and I want to marry you. And if I do, and you change along the way, I will kill you with my own hands. You know, because she up until that time, I didn't think it was possible for anybody to love me the way she did. At some point, she would come into my house, and there would probably be like 10 women in there, everybody different, everybody waiting for one thing or the other. And I'll look at her and I'll tell her, go home, I'll call you later. And she would just turn around, take her bags and go home. And when everybody's gone, I'll go grab her. So I used to feel like, are you pretending or you really do love me? And she used to say to me, I'm stuck on you. I love you because you are who you are, and because of all the things you've said to me and the things that I know. If I listen to what people say outside, I would never marry you. And so, to cut a long story short, I went to meet her mom and her people and did all the necessary things, and we got married. And it's been 20 years since that day that I made that. I don't want this to be churchy. I don't want to give you Ephesians and all of that, and, you know, man, love your wife. That will come. But here's the thing. Man in marriage, it's about success in marriage. It's about being able to hold a marriage together. And so when you gather men together to tell you what we should be doing in a marriage and how we can keep a marriage successful and make it what it is, we might as well gather all the women that we know and respect and tell them what they expect us to do, you know. But over and above that, because we have not done that, now here is what I want to say to people, because this is about me, my personal journey, and how some of the things that work for me and how it can work for you. I think that one of the biggest things that we face today is that Christians have not been able to locate their marriages within the principles that guide us as a people. The fight for the soul of the Christian brother, or for the soul of the Christian, has more or less been won by the forces of the world. And so when we contract a marriage, that's a marriage that Christ, in his wisdom, in everything, in his divine being, compared to his love for us, the church, his body. When we contract a marriage, we sort of leave the principles or the rules that should guide that relationship and begin to dwell on what the world will think about our marriage, or what the world thinks about our marriage, or what the world thinks about marriage in itself. The things that we begin, the indices that we begin to judge the successes of the success of our marriage upon, is not what the Bible, which is supposed to be the sum total of what guides our daily living as it affects marriage. Because I sat down with my wife this morning, and because when this topic came up, I've been talking to her, and she says to me, look, a woman can equally do everything that a man does, just to be able to take her mind off the fact that her man is not doing what he is supposed to be doing. But what does the woman do in reverse? She remembers that she is the virtuous woman. And when she remembers that, she has to take solace in the fact that there is a principle that guides her marriage. And that if you guys do that more and be more Christ-like and really, really do love us, because that is really what all of us we need, or women need. Women need to be loved. And when you love a woman, what do you do? If you can love a woman as much as you love yourself, like Colossians says to us, as much as you can love yourself, what do? You take off yourself. You adorn her just the way you adorn yourself. You adorn her with everything. So you can love her through thick and thin. You can love her through whatever she throws at you. I was talking to, God has a wicked sense of humor. I was talking to one of my team members shortly before this happened. And he was telling me that he just got married newly. And he was telling me, man, Papa, you have to tell, I need to run some things by you. And he was running some things by me. And I said to her, you know that I'm the wrongest person to ask these questions because, for me, my wife comes first. I joke all the time with my staff and I say to them that I worship the ground that my wife walks upon. And I just don't say it in words, but I also try to practicalize it. Last year, was it early this year? I think it was last year. God smiled on me and I got what I call my biggest paycheck yet. And my manager went to collect the check and brought the check and everybody was celebrating. And a few days later, I sent the money to my wife and I wrote a check for the same amount after I had spent 10% out of it. I wrote a check for the same amount and I gave it to my wife. And he said to me, Papa, why? Why did you do that? And I said, I think if there's anybody deserving of this paycheck, I've always wanted to just surprise her, surprise her to the height. I said, if there's anybody in my life that deserves this paycheck, it's for her. I was not expecting it. So I might as well say to myself that, pretend that I never got it. So I gave a check to her. I said, here, madam, buy yourself whatever you want to do, keep it for your children, whatever you want to do, it's up to you. And I do not have to have any kind of reference or control over how you do that. Now, this is just me saying to her at that point, I hadn't done anything. So it's not one of those things that you read or those jokes you hear that when the man buys the wife a fur coat or buys the wife a new car, the wife pauses and looks at him and says, what have you done this time? So this wasn't any of those things. And I wasn't also paying for anything in anticipation of whatever crime or sin I was going to commit in the future. The point that I'm trying to make here is that in practicalizing some of the things that some of the biblical injunctions or some of the things that our faith demands of us, we must have the presence of mind. You know how we get into work and get into all kinds of things and we forget the most important thing in our lives, which is the one that you're with. You know that joke during the pandemic when there's this guy that was asked during this lockdown that if you have a choice, you have two options. Option A, you have a choice to stay with your wife, and option B, and before they will even tell him what option B, he goes,
option B.
He goes B. That I found that joke a bit worrying. That if that is the state of majority of our marriages, then what's the point? What are we even sitting down here talking about marriages for? People demonize marriage. I do not think that it is right, but then again, it is another of the loss of Christianity, of Christian foundation to the forces of the world. I said earlier that the soul of the Christian brother or the Christian sister, in the fight to possess it has been won by the rest of the world, from social media to whatever it is. And this is what it is. We play with Christ all the time. Christ, when we want to do some things, we remove him, we remove God from the scheme of things and say, let me just do this one first. When I'm done, I'll go back to God. It is what has happened to the fundamentals of marriages. Marriages are no longer contracted with what God says it should be. Men do not love their wives with their actions. It is one thing to say you love your wife, but how well do you show her that? How reassuring does that come into? Does it come into when you relate with your wife? So for me, I try to, in the process of being busy, going through everything, I try to make sure that, is my wife happy? Am I doing the things that I'm supposed to do for her or with her? When she's very quiet, if it goes on for more than a few hours, I get worried. And just so you understand why this is even more important to me, all our kids are grown and they are out of the house, and we have been living together now for 9 years. 9 years alone in a house. Only when the kids come for holidays, no house help, no nothing. No, the chef doesn't stay over, you know. So it's just me and her. And so we have had to deal with, you know, some of the most fundamental things that happens to every couple. We go through our good times, we go through our bad times. But the thing is, and I will close with that later on, but let me just drop that now so that people can also contend with that. I can sum up the whole talk about marriage by saying, men, if you want to have a successful marriage, fear God, period. I fear God. I have a heart that really does pant after God. And when I'm in touch with my spiritual side, no matter how deep in the mud I am, knowing that I have a second chance, knowing that I have a God that will always, you know, abide with me, whose mercies are new every morning, I go back, you know, I find myself again. You know, no matter what it is that I have done or my wife does, we have the ability to be able to sit down, look at each other, and deal with it. And I said something to you guys earlier on that she said to me, I'm stuck on you. I always play that card also at her. Even before I play the card, she says to me, I'm not going anywhere. I don't have anywhere else to go. I told you from day one, and I mean it. It's I don't see how somebody loves you to the point of that kind of sacrifice. I mean, I am the one that is supposed to sacrifice. So I don't consider giving my wife material things sacrifice at all. I don't consider having to go out of my way to attend family functions or do things that will please her sacrifice at all. She, for me, she will always win my respect. She was in the public eye before I met her. And after we met and we got married, my wife turned around to me one day and said to me, babes, I need you to look for a job for me. I don't want to be in broadcasting anymore. And I'm like, why are you doing so well? And she says, no, I think that one member of the family in it is enough. And I felt really, really, really concerned and bad about it. And I kept saying to her that, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? And she kept saying to me, I don't want to be in the same media space with you. Somebody has to take a step back. And she did that for me. She stepped back. I mean, this was the same Jumobi Adegbeso who was on radio and on TV, People's Darling and everything. And she took that step back from me. Since that time, I mean, I look at this woman and I say to myself, you must be the darndest and luckiest and blessed man in the world. Because for a woman to take that kind of sacrifice for you or take that kind of step back for you, then you have no business not being, you know, able to dedicate the rest of your life to her. And this is what it is. A virtuous woman, a friend of mine, another woman who I spoke to earlier on, pastor, said to me that the virtual woman is a hustler.
Wow.
He said the virtuous woman is a hustler.
Correct.
The virtuous woman is a hustler. But go to Proverbs and read it. That this whole concept that we have marriage, the Christian body has marriage twisted. That this whole concept of full-time housewife, that she doesn't get it. She doesn't understand it because the Bible is never wrong. And it doesn't matter that it's in Proverbs. The Bible is never wrong. What does the virtuous woman do? She takes care of her family. She is the one that brings respect to the man. What does the man need to do to the virtuous woman? The man needs to love her like Christ loved the church.
Wow.
And that is the long and short of it. You can break down that love into all kinds of things. Look, I'm not one of those who gives you 10 points to a successful marriage or 5 points to a successful marriage.
Yeah.
The people will give you that later on. I am talking holistically, talking from my point of view, talking from my heart, just the things that I have done over the 20-year period that has sustained me.
RMD, you're too wise. You're too wise. And in fact, this is more. If you think about it, this is actually more than 20 years of experience. Actually, isn't it?
Yes.
You know.
And so for me, I have come to the point where I've discovered that my wife is a virtuous woman, and that's respect that I get at the city gates, which is all of this whole solid life that I live, this whole life that is anchored on Christ, is enabled by my wife, by a woman who is dedicated to me, who has decided to live the rest of her life with me, regardless of everything that I am. It's whats and all. It is not about the good times alone. It is with whats and all. And I'm not the best man in the world. There are times when she told me this thing some years ago, and she said she was in the salon, and some people were talking about her, about us, of course. You know how it is. They never, when you are a celebrity or when you are a known face or a known name, nobody gives your marriage a fighting chance. Nobody gives your marriage a fighting chance. So they were like, that marriage, that one won't last. And after a while, my wife said she couldn't take it anymore. She says, well, I'm the one in the marriage, and the marriage is still lasting. By the way, I'm Mrs. Moffett. And the woman turned and looked at her like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, my dear, I do not envy you. And she says, my wife said she had had enough. And she turned and looked at her and said, yes, you do. You envy me. Yes, you do. You envy me. You all want to be Mrs. Moffett and be Joe Boss.
RMD, we can listen to you forever. To be honest,